Day 2 of Essence is underway, and the festival is shining a spotlight on women's health. One healthcare professional is helping parents empower their children as they're experiencing puberty through her book, The Period and Puberty Parenting Revolution. This morning, we're catching up with Dr. Charis Chambers, also known as the Period Doctor. Dr. Chambers, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome to New Orleans. I know you're from Atlanta.
Yes, I am. I love New Orleans. I specifically love the food.
Everyone does, and we're happy to have you here. I hope you're enjoying it and enjoying your time with Essence.
Yes.
Now tell us a little bit about the book and how it kind of guides parents through this real critical time in a child's life.
Yes, so this book was born from my lived experience. So I am a board certified OBGYN, but I specialize in pediatric and adolescent gynecology. And so what that means is I've worked with hundreds of parent-child pairs through this transition of puberty and periods. And so my role has been to educate them and to give them my best medical guidance. But what I realized was that there were so many layers of stigma and shame and misinformation that affected that conversation and that time in their lives. And so my book is essentially like a love letter to these parents and to their children with everything I wish I could give them in my visits, kind of putting into context everything they're going through, validating it, and encouraging them to show up for their kids.
I'm curious, after writing this and maybe getting feedback from readers, was there something in the book that just really resonated or maybe surprised them?
Yeah, so I think the thing that people like the most is how I start the book. So I start the book with my first period story. And what I've learned as I've traveled during my book tour is that everyone remembers some or part of their first period. And so it might bring people to tears, but they remember it, and they remember specifically how they were made to feel. And so I think that lays the groundwork for how critical this is, and it does kind of encourage them to really step up to the plate to show up for their kids, because their kids will remember this moment.
I think, absolutely. I think everyone, all women remember that moment. And I'm curious too, just putting periods kind of in the spotlight,
Yes.
right? This is not something that people everywhere are talking about,
right.
But what has been the response with that, with kind of bringing this into the conversation?
Yeah, so I started educating on social media back in 2019, and I chose the name The Period Doctor, so people would have to say period in order to say what my name is. So if they ask me my Instagram, I'm like, The Period Doctor, and they're typing it in, I'm like, okay. Even when I go to hotels, my email will be like, theperioddoctor.com, and they're like, you know? And I love that. I feel like bringing it to the forefront in the spotlight is where it belongs. And when we don't talk about it, when it's shrouded in silence, that's how misconceptions get passed down. That's how shame grows. So bringing it out from the shadows into the light, I feel like you give people a better opportunity to speak up for themselves, to identify what's abnormal, and to get the help they need.
What do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I would say that when a young person starts bleeding, they are suddenly a woman. That just is so triggering for me, but it's especially triggering for people that navigate this world of African ancestry. Our younger and black girls have a greater burden of something called adultification bias. And so that means that when they're walking around in this world, they are seen as more mature and less in need of nurturing and less in need of mercy as their counterparts. And so when you think about elevating them from that moment of bleeding to a woman when they just get all of the burdens and none of the benefits, that doesn't make sense. And a lot of parents pull away from their kids during this time when what they need to be doing is leaning in closer.
I love that. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing today at Essence.
Yes, so today at Essence, I will be talking on the main stage all about heavy bleeding and fibroids. This talk is sponsored by Always and CVS, and I'm so excited. The panel is truly dynamic, and I'll be moderating.
Awesome. All right. Again, you can hear more from Dr. Chambers. That's the Morial Convention Center today, 12:30 on the main stage with Always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lily.